podcast is back, coming off one of the better fight nights of the year. We're here to break down UFC 275. It's a big week for the UFC as well. We're in Singapore for the pay-per-view. They're doing that road to the UFC, trying to beefing up, the Asian market of some. And two big title fights on the line. The first one in the main event, light heavyweight strapman. We got Glover making his first defense, taking on Jiri Prochazka, who is as crazy and unorthodox as anybody on the roster. In the co-main event, Valentina fights Taila Santos, and despite another one of these crazy betting lines on Valentina, a lot of people think this is her toughest fight in a long time as well. Since it's a pay-per-view, we're going to break down 3 fights, and what pleasure it is to get to rewatch and break down the greatest fight in women's MMA history, in my opinion, between Zhang, Weili and Joanna, Jędrzejczyk. Last week, dogs weren't barking like we thought they were going to. There were some greasy, probably incorrect decisions made throughout the fight card. For the first time, I happened to come out on the right side of all of them pretty luckily. I know you, on the other hand, did not, but not a small loss, something we can easily make back.
When we take a look at that fight card, starting off, man, your best bet of the week was Ode Osborne. I don't think that could have gone any better for you, man. You've had 1.5 units on him at minus 152. Great line. And then looking down, we both took the shot on JJ Aldridge plus 460. And for what it's worth, I think she covered her price tag.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, unlucky that she got caught in that guillotine, but she looked excellent. And I think if that fight would have gone, if she could have found her way out of that guillotine, that fight might have gone differently. I'm happy to take that stab anytime. Yeah. The Evloev versus Selecki parlay, you hit for 2 units. And, regardless of how you feel about the Selecki fight, I think the best argument you could have is a draw. And either way, you're going to be coming out on profit with that. So, good parlay. And then the craziest loss, Karolina Kowalkiewicz wins by decision plus 165. Great line. And, of course, KK gets her first finish in, half a decade. You ended up the night plus 1.2 units and 11% return on investment. Good night for you. Looking at my card, my best bet of the night was Alexander Volkov at minus 154. Not the best line, but another first-round knockout. Can't really ask for more. I got to talk the Zimagulov bet. That was my underdog of the week. I had 2 units on him. Big swing for me, but
and the decision prop.
It was it was brutal, but banking on a fighter who's going to win by small control time and not a lot of volume, you're kind of asking for it. Maybe don't go as heavy next time, but it is what it is. And then the Poliana Botella versus Karine Silva fight doesn't go the distance at plus money. Just looking down at those girls' record, it was honestly a weaky cap. Just looking at the record, it's like, I got plus money for it. I'll take a stab, and that one ended up paying off. It ended up kind of saving my night a little bit, those last 2 fights, and I only ended up minus 0.72 units with the exact opposite, minus 11% return on investment. And like you said, it's one that we can easily bounce back from. In our main event, we have the current light heavyweight champion Glover Teixeira making his first title defense against Jiri Prochazka. And this is going to be an amazing fight, man. We've got old school versus new school, and I'm so conflicted trying to pick a side in this fight. It's hard for me to want to go heavy on either fighter. Yep. On one hand, I see the holes in Glover's striking that have been there since his fight with Gus, Rumble 5 years ago, and even this Santos fight where he's getting tagged so many times. There's just no way that Jiri doesn't crack his chin. And on the other hand, you see an untested Jiri who showed weakness and lack of technique on the ground against far inferior grapplers like Dominic Reyes, getting his back taken and just using those Derek Lewis type explosions to get to his feet. One slip up with old man Glover and he's absolutely screwed. Both of those scenarios lead me to believe that the under is the play, but damn it, I hate a 1.5 line being set for the over under. Ultimately, I'm going to side with Glover, kind of go with my gut. I think his experience is going to shine, and, we love getting plus money on a proven UFC vet against a newcomer in Jiri who really hasn't had that grappling tested yet. I almost took him inside the distance. Then I got to thinking about Glover's last few finishes, and, I think Jan Blachowicz said that he wasn't at full health when he lost, and that's why we practically saw him tapping before Glover even put the choke in. We know Santos has a black belt, but we've also seen that he has zero clue what to do off of his back. And then Anthony Smith is just another display of toughness that almost made it go to the judges. So I'm hoping that maybe you could talk me into playing that under, maybe finding a spot that I can, because I want to. They're just juicing the fight doesn't go the distance to minus 600, right. So I'm kind of looking for ways to play it.
Yeah, so for me, the fight finishes inside the distance at probably like an 85% clip here, if you want my honest opinion. Glover, in his last 14 fights, he's seen the scorecards 3 times, and Jiri has seen the scorecards twice in his entire 32-fight career. So, I mean, there's plenty of statistics to back it up. Under 3.5 doesn't start round 4, I think is a very, very safe parlay piece. But the under 2.5, I think, a little bit more sketch, but you're only getting minus 175, and I think that's playable here. You talk about being really conflicted on the money line side. It's the same for me. I think the props are kind of the way to attack this fight, whether it's, an under or it's Glover inside the distance with the massive grappling upside. But also to have Prochazka's TKO at like minus 115, minus 120, I think there's potential that hits at a much higher clip as well. Glover almost seems like the light heavyweight Charles Oliveira, the way he always put down and ends up finding a way to come back and submit these guys. But my heart tells me Glover, but there's just so much kind of like going against his favor. Jiri's so big, so long, so much more athletic, and speed kills, and Jiri's going to have a big, massive speed advantage. He's 13 years old, or 13 years younger, and you got to think that the UFC is probably like their 28-year-old sensation, to be a champion. But I'm right back with you, man. If Glover gets a hold of him, damn it could be a wrap, quickly. But if he doesn't get him down, I think, Glover's probably going to get knocked out pretty badly. The flying knee in particular is something that scares me, while Glover's going to be kind of desperately looking for those attempts. It is really hard for me, like I said, to pick a side here, because Glover, he's a champion, man. He's coming here as an underdog. Champions come through time and time and time again in the UFC history, and I think he has the clearest path to victory. I've seen him rocked. I've seen him tagged by Cutelaba, by Santos, by, plenty of times, and able to recover, able to still get you down and work his ground game. I think it's the clearest path to victory, where Jiri's relying on the TKO and the knockout, where Glover's been able to withstand that lately. So, yeah, I think I'm going to come out on the side of you, man, and take old man Glover.
Love it.
In our co-main event of the evening, we have Valentina making another defense of her title, taking on Taila Santos. I talked about it a little bit in the intro there. Nobody ever gets any type of love from the odds makers when they're fighting Valentina. But when you look at it, they kind of are. Valentina's been a minus 1,000 favorite in 4 of her last 5, and sitting at a minus 700, people are giving Taila Santos a bit of a chance here. And, I've locked in some big money line tickets on her as well. I think this is definitely one of Val's harder tests that she's had lately. She's been as dominant as a champion could be. She's up at 35, given, what a lot of people consider the GOAT and Amanda Nunes. 2 tough fights, and dominated every single person at 125. Finished 4 of her last 6 inside the distance, which is what you want to see from a champion. And while she was considered as crazy good striker for a long time, she's actually started to mix her game up a whole lot well. She's averaging 4.5 takedowns per fight in her last 4 title defenses. But the one little blemish people like to look at is the round that she lost to Jennifer Maia when she spins on her back. And I think that's why a lot of people, can possibly see Taila Santos ending up on top here, maybe laying out some time in Shevchenko's guard. And, she's got some pop on her shots. You saw her put JoJo down twice. Now, I don't necessarily think she has anything for Valentina on the feet, but she can pop, and she does like to mix her game up. I think this one sees over. I think Taila Santos is a tough girl that's going to extend Valentina and maybe even take a round or 2 off of her. My pick is going to be Val, but I'm always going to stab on a wide MMA line like that, for a potential upset. How about yourself?
Yeah, so I really, really wanted to place a little bet on Santos, just like you, but after the tape, I just couldn't bring myself to it. Here's what I will give her, though. I'm with you that just like Jennifer Maia, she will find herself on top of Val at one point in time, and she's very, very good at keeping that control. Usually that means taking 0 risk at all, right. But, hell, control's control for whatever it's worth in today's MMA.
Haven't been shit lately.
Right. On the feet, I think we're going to see an absolute clinic from Shevchenko here. The jab's going to land at will, and anytime that Santos sets up for one of those big overhand shots, I think that she's going to just pop that out there, mess up the rhythm of Santos, and she's just not going to be not be able to get a read. I'm interested to see how the leg kicking battle goes. I really like the commitment to leg kicks from Santos, but they do seem to be rather telegraphed, and I'm expecting Val to be able to check those and immediately give her back real leg kicks right after it. Although I think Santos will steal one of the rounds off the card, I'm also in the fight, I'm also predicting that she finds herself on her back after a sloppy takedown attempt, maybe later on in the fight. And, you know, my girl Shevchenko doesn't just go for control when she's on top, man. I could definitely see Santos getting tired, third or fifth round, shooting that sloppy takedown and getting full mounted crucifix position, just like the Andrade fight. Yep. Ref is going to have to step in. The sneakiest play I see on the board right now is Shevchenko by TKO at plus 250 on FanDuel. But plus money on Shevchenko inside the distance against a girl who's never been in a 5-round fight sounds just as good to me.
Yeah, so plus 250 on a line. She's knocked out 3 of her last 4 opponents. I think that's a great line. I'm only a quarter unit deep on Taila Santos. The line is wide. I think she's going to put up a little bit better of a fight than a Lauren Murphy, a Jennifer Maia. And if they're going the full 5 rounds, extending Val to round 4, it makes me a little bit more confident. I think my over 1.5, 2.5 little parlay pieces might hit.
Moving on to the people's main event, we have Weili Zhang versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk, a women's strawweight bout, probably a title eliminator.
Yeah, I mean, Dana was saying something about it.
Okay, yeah, and probably the best fight on the card, man. I've seen quite a bit of love on the socials for Joanna, and I think it's natural. It kind of reminds me of when Dominic Cruz came back. Both of them were so dominant for so long, ex-champions, taking a long layoff, and then coming back as an underdog. And all that being said, you know, Dominic Cruz, he was coming back to fight somebody like Casey Kinney. Joanna's coming back to fight Weili from Zhang, you know? After 2 years off at 30 years old, it's always kind of been a big red flag for me. And it seems like the majority of the time, it's not the same fighter that they were when they left. Judging by social media, Joanna does look to be in phenomenal shape. And after her training partner, Karolina Kowalkiewicz' performance last week, I think it's safe to say that they're working hard over there in Poland. But this being a 3-round fight, I actually think it's going to favor Weili. Even though this camp hasn't been with Henry Cejudo, I do think that Weili has developed her grappling tenfold working with Fight Ready. And in a 3-round fight, I think she's much more likely to mix in her grappling early because there's less risk of gassing over the course of the fight. And as we saw in round 5 of her latest fight with Rose, it's the grappling that was always in her back pocket. She just waited too long to bust it out. Striking, I think it's near even with Weili having the power shots and Joanna having the edge in volume. Ultimately, I think that Weili will use her physicality to mix in takedowns early as well as match Joanna on the exchanges in the feet. I predict a grindy decision for Weili and a bunch of complaining from Joanna when she's on the bottom. I don't know if Weili's in her head, but she just posted on IG and wrote, "We meet again. She is so much prettier. Let's go." And I love that if that's some trash talk from her.
I think I'm going to be on the same side of you as much as it hurts me to go against my girl Joanna. I said it earlier, it's the best women's fight in history. Absolute treat it is to watch it back this week. Fight is so close. Watching it live, I thought Joanna edged it out. And then going back this week, I cut the sound off. I watched it. And I do agree with Eric Colin's scorecard there, man. I have it 2-2 going into the 5th round, and I thought Joanna edged it out ever so slightly there, but I will never say there's a robbery on either side. There's one round out of all 5 that is scored unanimously, and it's only round 3 for Joanna. UFC stats, when you look at it, 3 of the 5 rounds, the UFC has them landing the exact number of significant strikes, so it's a very tricky one, and I think it probably goes to full 15 again, and is going to be another tricky one to score. For Weili, I thought she did kind of fade a little bit down the stretch. I did give Joanna the last 3 rounds, but it was Weili's first time going 5 rounds, and so it's something that you like to give her a pass. You brought up the wrestling, and I think that's something she should absolutely implement here. You always got to give Joanna more than a striking battle to think about, because she will always make a striking battle close, But for Joanna to have a little bit more success this time if she wants to win, needs to hide her kicks a little bit better. You could tell that Zhang Weili started getting the timing on them. She was catching the front kicks. She was countering with the big right hand off of her kicks. And be more technical. You got the big octagon here. Don't go out there and just brawl with someone who carries twice the power of you and potentially lose because you have more damage on your face like last time. So I think there's both things, girls can improve on here, but the biggest, elephant in the room for me is Joanna's layoff. It's 2 years since she's competed. She's 34 years old. She's gotten the enhancements up top and seems to be a little bit more concerned, about making money outside of the fighting game, whether it's on Instagram and social media and all this kind of stuff. While Zhang Weili has had 2 championship fight camps back-to-back, while she's went to Fight Ready, while she's now in Bangtao Muay Thai, she is the one to me that is improving every single day, adding aspects and things to her game that she can improve on. I don't necessarily know if I have any interest betting on this fight at Zhang Weili, at like minus 165, but my gut's going to tell me that she takes this one again, man.
And I'm assuming we both think it's going to decision.
Yeah, I think Zhang Weili wins a decision.
Yeah, I might find myself putting a little money on Weili as the line continues to drop. I think there's going to be a lot of Joanna money coming in late. Right. And then also the fight starts round 3 at minus 300, minus 330. I think that's a pretty safe parlay piece. For my fight of the night pick, I ended up going with Maheshate versus Steve Garcia. Absolute banger of a fight. I think both these guys are going to come in full force, and it's very unlikely that we see the judges here. Initially, I liked Garcia. Twice as many fights against better competition at that. Showed up in his last fight against Charlie O that he can fight through adversity, has a good gas tank. Then I started looking through at his record, and there are a lot of similarities in his last few losses, and even that Charlie O fight where he almost got put out 3 different times. He doesn't perform well against guys who are bigger than him. In the Alon Cruz fight, Alon Cruz is like 6'1". The Luis Pena 6'3", and then the Charlie Otaveros fight, he's 6'2". And I just think that, his ability to move forward is amazing, but it costs him a lot, and it leaves himself open for counters because he's throwing these wide hooks, and it seems like longer fighters it's fairly easy to get a read on him, and they're able to beat him with the punch with their length. Maheshate has faced some limited opposition, to say the least. I'm really only putting weight on his Contender Series performance because even I might be able to land a first-round TKO over a 0-3 fighter on the regional scene. There's a couple things that are going in favor of Maheshate, though. Extremely big for the weight class at 6 foot. Extremely accurate right hand that he's able to throw on the back foot, very similar to Dominic Reyes. Dominic Reyes is left hand, but I just see that happening. Garcia moving forward, Maheshate sitting down on one of those. And, on top of that, how is Garcia training for this fight? He has 0 tape study to go off of. Even the odds makers in the Contender Series fight had him at a plus 425 against the Achilles guy he faced. And, he's unknown at this point in his career. I'm actually holding out for more props to drop on this fight, but I really love this D-Gen shot on Maheshate early. I expect him to find that chin of Garcia, and I think that he will have more of a finishing upside than Charlie Otaveros.
I don't know what to think about this fight, to be honest with you. You talked about kind of Steve grinding on the regional scene. He fought some pretty good names, but it was as low as bantamweight, and so despite being a 6 foot frame, he probably is going to give up some size to a lot of lightweights out there. And then the only fight you have to watch in the 2.5 years of Steve Garcia is Charlie Antiveros, and it's a fight where he's dropped numerous times by a borderline 500 fighter, so he's tough. Like you said, he welcomes the war on the feet. Biggest thing for me here, his wrestling. I think he's going to be able to out-wrestle Maheshate here. Maheshate, there's 2 fights on the tape index to watch, so there's really not a lot to go off of. And when you look through the record, it's 7 total fights, and one of these guys have a winning record, and it was the guy on the Contender Series. And last time Chinese fighters fought with Zhang Weili and stuff on the card, they go like 0 for 4. The Chinese circuit just really hasn't been producing like they want to lately. You talked about him being a plus 400 on the Underdog. I thought he came through, man. He looked good. They got after it quick. He had a good front kick, and you talked about how well he was at moving backwards and still being able to fight. You did see Charlie Antiveros with his back on the cage still tagged Steve Garcia and kind of drop him. So, yeah, that is absolutely a worry. But my gut tells me that Garcia could come out here and look like an absolute easy win on Saturday. Just the better wrestler, more volume, better camp. But I don't necessarily know if I want to back Steve Garcia when he's getting dropped the way he does by Charlie Antiveros at the same time. So my pick is going to be Garcia. time of writing this, I didn't have any action on Garcia, but I do have a little bit on him now. Parlayed him with an under to get plus money. Garcia hesitantly is the side.
So just another thing I wanted to throw out there. We haven't seen the props dropped on the books that me and you use, but we are seeing like a round one Maheshate plus 600. And I don't see much value outside of that round one. I want to make that clear because he is an unknown fighter. I just see that there are holes in Garcia's game early. And, before the Contender Series fight, Maheshate was fighting up at welterweight. So I do think that he's going to have a significant advantage in the octagon. I'm just hoping that he can use that early to tag him at a good price.
For my fight to talk about, I'm going to pick Jack Della Maddalena and Ramazan Emeev. Before I get into it, kind of want to address the line here. And I think the line, honestly, is wrong. I think it's a big case of recency bias where the bookies are, riding the hype of their prospect that they like. And to have a very dominating technical wrestler like Emeev as the underdog, I think they're in a position to get, the bookies are in a position to get burnt on Saturday. It's who here has the clearest path to victory. I think that's an easy question or an easy answer. Emeev, with Jack, this guy's coming off a debut win over another debuting fighter in Pete Rodriguez, a guy who was 4-0, a guy who had turned pro in 2020, a guy that was just content to stand in the middle and bang with him and cashed out under 1.5 for us, if you remember. Jack's boxing, man, it is elite. He fights well behind the jab. He's excellent at baiting his opponents into like the dead space and then countering. You saw him throw that jab like 3 times in a row to get Pete to throw, step back, counter him. It's what you like to see for a guy who's nice on the feet like that. But I don't necessarily see the well-rounded game that I like to see from Jack Maddalena. I've seen him struggle with takedowns on the regional scene, and I really question, again, why do they make this type of matchup for their prospect? It's kind of an opportunity to get his hype train derailed. Emeev, you can say he's equally as one-dimensional just in, the other facet of the game. He has little to no striking, but he's always a really good wrestler. And in this, this matchup, I think that's who I really favor, the ability to chain wrestle, gas tank, and put these takedown attempts together and put Jack on his back. Only concern here, once he gets on top of you, yes, he's a hard guy to get off you, but the issue is Emeev has, he's not very active. No hunting for the submissions. He doesn't have any ground and pound. Zumagulov, Holly Holm, they were literally not rewarded for any type of control time in the last 2 weeks. And then in Emeev's last fight against Danny Roberts, takes him down, doesn't do nothing, and he's not, rewarded for any of his control time. The guy's been to a split decision in his last 2. The difference is I'm not having to lay minus 300 this time. I'm laying plus 115, plus 135, and I'm getting Emeev by decision around plus 200. So this time around, I think it's definitely worth the stab, man. What do you think?
Yeah, I guess I'm with you as well. The scrambling ability of Maddalena kind of worries me, and you already talked about the control time of Emeev. But as far as the matchup goes with striker versus grappler, we've seen Emeev go to decision in every fight since 2016. Hopefully he's got it figured out. I hope that he's been watching recent UFC fights because you're right. He's going to have to do a little bit more on the ground to make up for the moments that he will most likely lose on the feet against Maddalena. So I'm with you. I think that it's the smart shot to take it on Emeev, especially at dog odds right here. Can't blame anybody for taking that shot. My fighter to watch is going to be Andre Fialho taking on Jake Matthews. This will be his 4th appearance in 2022. Absolutely insane. His last 2 bouts, first round knockouts. And, if I'm being completely honest, they haven't looked the best until he found the chin of his opponents. But I think that that's kind of his game. Like, he's not changing anything up from what we've seen on the regional scene. He's a round 1, round 2 TKO or bust type of fighter. And that's fine. You just have to find those ways to play him. I've been lucky to cash on his TKO spot in his last 2 fights, and I think a lot of people were putting a lot of weight on the Michel Pereira debut. Michel Pereira's on a 5-fight win streak. He's beaten Nico Price, just beat Santiago Ponzinibbio. That dude's no joke. Like, I wouldn't expect Jake Matthews to even come close to beating Michel Pereira. So I don't hold much weight to that at all. From what I can tell, the best way to play Fialho is by TKO, but I would love for him to show us just a little bit more in his game. And somebody like Jake Matthews, who's a young base wrestler, but has kind of fallen in love with this striking, I think that he's going to be the guy to kind of test Fialho, push him to these new places that he's not used to, and maybe we can get a better read in the future on how Fialho fights. I also will be taking some Fialho TKO props, so I wouldn't mind if he just does what he usually does and gets him out of there early.
Yeah, man, dude's making huge strides right now. He fought like 4 times in 2021 as well, and already, like you said, 4 times this year, making basically his monthly appearance right now, you know. But when you're having that much success, man, in round 1, why not rack up the paychecks and keep the momentum going? So I like it, but I do think he's in a bit of a tougher battle here, that someone who has potential to mix it up and might not just stand in front of him like the other two. For me, fighter to watch, I'm going to go with Seung-Woo Choi. He's sitting at a -225. I've had action on Choi in his last 3 fights, and again, have action on him here. He's a guy for me that I really like to watch, and he's going to be bouncing off of, I think, one of his first losses in a minute when he lost Alex Caceres. I love watching Choi strike, man. He's the Korean Muay Thai national champion. I know it was the fight with Julian Erosa, first exchange. You know who was going to win that fight. You see who was just, there's no wind up. Everything's so technical, straight down the middle, nasty left hook. And the guy's still young, and he was thrown to the wolves early. You know, Gavin Tucker, Mavzar, right out the gates. I think he's improving from it. And I won't be shocked if Choi is actually the one who has a little bit of the grappling upside here against Culibao. Culibao is twice the stationary target of Alex Caceres. Caceres is one of the hardest people to touch, and I think Choi is going to have his openings at a much higher rate here, and I don't ever see the wrestling or submission threat from Culibao, who has not had a submission on his record yet. So I don't know how much of a threat Culibao will be to take him down, but if this stays on the feet, I 100% got to favor Choi here. It's a completely winnable fight for him. Stylistically, I think it's a good one for him, but coming off a loss, -225, I think he's someone we got to keep our eyes on.
Yeah, I agree. My underdog of the week is going to be Ramona Pascal taking on Jocelyn Edwards. Right off the bat, we're talking about a women's fight. I might not put too much weight into this, but stylistically, I think that this is an absolute nightmare for Jocelyn Edwards. And it's really odd because I've seen a lot of people heavy on Jocelyn Edwards this week, and I watched all of the tape that I could, and I don't understand it. Like, where are you drawing that from? She has shown that she has awful grappling, and it doesn't look to be improving. Now, in her defense, she's been fighting better fighters than Ramona Pascal and Jessica Rose Clark and Carol Rosa, but
styles make fights.
Styles make fights, man. And for what it's worth, I know Ramona lost her last fight against a smaller fighter, but a big knockout threat in Josiane Nunez, and she looked good in that round 1, man. I know that like her striking defense wasn't the best, but oh my gosh, like the knees she was throwing, the strikes that she was willing to deliver inside of the pocket with a girl like Josiane Nunez, who's known for her knockout power. I really, really liked it. I know that she also took that fight short notice, replacing it was replacing Yanan Wu, actually. And so, I don't blame her too much for kind of slowing down as the fight continued. This one, she's going to have full fight camp. It's going to be up at featherweight. I know Jocelyn Edwards likes to have a size advantage. She's not going to have one here. She's going to be Ramona's much thicker. I think she's going to come out strong again, and I think she's going to be able to utilize her grappling advantage and win rounds here. Man, I'm all over Ramona Pascal, and I'm trying to talk myself out of being too heavy on her, but I do think that she's got all the edge here.
Honestly, man, if it helps you out anyone to play it, I think Ramona's the side as well. You talked about it being up at 45. Size is everything in women's MMA, especially when that girl who is coming up, going to have to give up the extra weight, is going to be defending takedowns all day. Ramona Pascal, Extreme Couture, really good girls to train with. She shot 10 takedowns on short notice against Josiane Nunez. I don't fault her for really slowing down, shooting that much on short notice. If she comes out here and shoots 10 takedowns, she's going to rack up so much control time.
And this is the first fight that Jocelyn Edwards has ever had at featherweight. This is normal for her, man. So
yeah, I'm with you, man. I think Ramona's the side. Underdog for me, a pretty popular underdog this week. He's already gotten some love in Jake Matthews. recency bias again. We kind of just broke down Fialho and how much success he's had this year and back-to-back TKOs over Baeza and Van Camp. And I think he's just kind of been lucky to get some guys who were defensively, not very sound and are willing to sit down in the pocket and throw with him. I just don't know if he's going to get that style from Jake Matthews. Jake is known in the past for being able to mix his game up a little bit. He's never been TKO'd on the feet. And when he loses, it's usually by getting submitted, by getting out-grappled, by better wrestlers. All these fight camps back-to-back for Fialho, you've talked about overworking yourself, the weight cuts every single month, whether it's big, small, you're still cutting, a lot every single month. He's finishing all these guys in round one, and we're not getting to see him extended. So what if he has to work some? What if he has to defend some takedown attempts down the stretch? I think we could see him fade a little bit, lose some of that KO power in the second and third round, and maybe those takedowns for Jake get a little bit easier as the fight progresses. I do think he's primed for an upset. He's been out of competition for about, I think a year and a half, which is a little bit worrisome. But he's only 27. There's plenty of time to improve. I think he is the more complete fighter, while Fialho kind of just seems to be that KO or bust at this point. But it is scary to go against someone who's, fighting every month, feeling the way they do, on a hot streak and things. So I think he has potential to mix it up. I took him at plus 142. I think he probably wins the decision here, but I think Jake Matthews covers that price tag.
Yeah, and something that we talked about, I think it's a good shot and one that's almost like you have to play it. Like you said, Fialho's kind of being tested for the first time in the UFC with somebody who will utilize grappling, and I need Jake Matthews to utilize grappling in this fight because if it is on the feet, I do think that he's falling in love with the striking a little more than I like. But as far as the matchup wise, he's been fighting the better competition. He's proven to be able to get UFC wins, and I think that he should edge this out. So at plus money, easy play and a good one. My prop bet of the fight card is going to be Valentina Shevchenko inside the distance. I've been liking trying to find these like huge favorites and play their inside the distance line, especially when you're getting plus money. For somebody in Santos who's never seen 5 rounds, never been past the 3rd round, I do think that Shevchenko's champion experience is going to take over in those later rounds. We're going to start to see Santos slow down. And I expect Shevchenko to end up in a dominant position and find either the TKO or catch her in a sub. I know Santos, I think it was in the Jillian Robertson fight. She was in the safest position, in her inside of Jillian's guard and almost got arm barred. I think that Shevchenko is going to have the opportunity to capitalize on Santos being sloppy on the ground if she does try and take risks by gaining position. I think that she'll open herself up. And if Shevchenko winds up on top, I think that she's more than likely to find a finish. So plus, I think it's plus 120, plus 130. I like that one.
Man, to get plus money on like a finish of a minus 700 favorite, I don't hate that at all. And then I think she finished 4 of her last 6 opponents or something like that. Mm-hmm. So, she's a proven finisher at 125. And you're right. I think if the finish comes, I think it does come late in those rounds where, Taila just doesn't have the experience in and has had to grapple a bunch and slows down. So, man, Valentina, as dangerous as she is to get plus money on a finish, I'd almost bet that all the time too, man. Glover Teixeira submission plus 430 for me as my prop. Reminds me of, always taking a shot on Alexei Oleinik sub prop. It's
or the Paul Craig sub prop.
It's almost a given, broken the fight down already, so I won't go into great detail. But the clearest path to victory for Glover is going to be to take this fight down. He does not want to stand in front of Jiri for more than like 30 seconds at a time. Glover is excellent at pushing you back toward the cage to where those takedown attempts get easier, where he doesn't have to close as much distance. Mm-hmm. And if he doesn't get the first one, man, he is able to chain wrestle some of those attempts together. And I do think Jiri is found on the mat a lot in this fight. He's also been racking up a ton of control time lately, hunting for submissions on the mat. So, whether it's the Anthony Smith fight, the Thiago Santos, when he gets you down, he keeps you there, man, and he beats you up and he looks for the sub. Of his last 5 finishes, 4 of them are by submission. So to get plus 430 in a fight where the only success I think Glover has is when he is on the mat, his black belt on the mat is far superior to anything Jiri could have fixed over a couple fight camps. And while I've already stabbed on Glover inside the distance at like plus 220, I think, I really expected the sub prop to only be like plus 300, So to get plus 430 on Glover sub, I think that's something worth stabbing at.
My best bet on the card is actually a parlay. I've got the Valentina Shevchenko Taila Santos fight. Fight starts round 3. And the Weili Zhang Joanna Jędrzejczyk fight starts round 3. Add them both together, and it is minus 124. I absolutely love that. Yeah. Although I think Santos is going to get finished, like we both said, we think it's going to be later on in the fight. And if all she has to do is survive 10 minutes, I think that might actually be one of the rounds that she steals. Exactly, so I love the fight starts round 3 there at minus 260. And then the Weili versus Joanna, I think that one's a lock. I think it's going to the judges, but to shave 5 minutes off of it and just get fight starts round 3, I think that's an excellent bet. They both know each other. They've been inside the octagon. They felt each other, and I expect Weili to grapple a whole lot more. So I think that this also starts round 3.
Yeah, so I actually like that. Like you said with the Santos, I think she has success. It could be early when she finds a takedown or two and extends that fight out. And Zhang Weili and Joanna, I think that sees the full 15 minutes at a high clip. So I like that parlay. I think you hit it. For me, best bet, I hate giving it out because of what it is now, but it's going to be Brendan Allen. I took him at minus 196 for 2.5 units, and now the guy's north of minus 300. We've done our job. Just need to go out. He needs to go out there and finish it inside the distance, man. So I don't even have to sweat this. He's turned pro at 19 years old. Got thrown into LFA. And despite coming up short while he was young, every name he lost to in LFA comes to the UFC and, gets UFC wins. Malkoun, on the other hand, it is a 2-fight win streak. He fought a welterweight who really couldn't make weight and was dealing with all kind of allegations outside the octagon. And then he fights a Dana White Contender Series debutant who gives him a pretty tough fight at the same time. So the guy's got 6 fights total to his name, I think, prior to the UFC or something like that. And I know he gets some shit for only being in the UFC because of Robert Whittaker. It's actually the only time he's fought yet without Robert Whittaker headlining or co-main eventing the card. So he's got to make that flight by himself. He's not going to have Rob in the corner, things like that. So something different he's used to. I think both of these guys are going to consider their strong suit their jiu-jitsu black belt. That's typically how they like to win fights. But I think the size and jiu-jitsu of Allen is something I favor a bit more on the feet. Allen's the one that I think's made improvements on the feet as well and is probably going to have that striking advantage. I really couldn't agree more with the line movement. I think Allen wins this at like a 75% clip. I know he's coming off a TKO loss, so I thought that's why I saw the minus 196 and was jumping on it. But yeah, Brendan Allen heavily here. I don't know if it's TKO. I don't know if it's submission. I'm more of a money line bettor, but I think he gets it done inside the distance.
Moving on to the quick pick section of the podcast, we have our first fight of the night against Jocelyn Edwards versus Ramona Pascual. You guys already know Ramona's my underdog. I expect her to come out and get the win rather easy, actually.
Yeah, especially if this is at 45 like it's rumored to be. Pascal for the wrestling win here. Next one up, staying at the women's, dropping down to strawweight. Silvana Gomez-Juarez taking on Na Liang. Back-to-back dogs, give me Na Liang.
I think I'm with you, man. That's funny. We're both seeing it Na Liang.
I'm not betting it.
No, right. Super confident that this one doesn't see the judges, though.
Yeah.
Then moving on, we have Kyung Ho Kang versus Dana Batch-Jarrell. And I'm going to go Dana, man. I'm going to go Dana. First favorite pick of the card.
I'm torn on it. I haven't really done my due diligence because I don't necessarily know if I want to bet it. Dana's 3 months removed from a TKO loss. I see the grappling upside for Kong, so third underdog in a row. I'm going to go with King Ho Kong. And let's just make that 4 underdogs in a row when I take Jake Matthews to beat Andre Fialho.
I'm going to go Fialho. I really like him, and I've been cashing on him, so I think I have a little bit of bias, but I'd love for Fialho to go out here and get another one. Maheshate versus Steve Garcia. I am going Maheshate as another underdog for myself.
I'm going to go with Steve Garcia. I think it's actually going to rather be boring, I think he's going to have to wrestle him and make this fight boring, and that's not what we want to see, but going to go with Steve Garcia. Seung-Woo Choi taking on Josh Kulabau at 45. I'm going to go with my boy Seung-Woo Choi. I like him to win. I think he might get the TKO too.
Yeah, I'm with you. I see that fight the exact way. Then Brendan Allen versus Jacob Malkoun. Both of us on Brendan Allen, and I think that's a pretty safe bet.
Yeah, I think Brendan Allen is a safe bet as well, man. Got on him early, and I think he has potential for a finish too. Moving on to my fight and to the main card, we got Jack Della Maddalena taking on Emeev. Emeev's been screwed out of some decisions. His style has not really been rewarded lately. But to get him at plus money, I'll take that all day.
Yeah, for betting purposes, I think Emeev is the side, but I think I'm gonna favor Maddalena here. I'd like to see Maddalena win because I know it would be a more exciting fight. Exactly. You know what I'm saying? So I'll go with Maddalena here. Not a strong lean either way. Then we have Bontarine versus Manuel Kopp. One that we somehow managed to avoid talking about. I'm just realizing, but we're both on Kopp pretty heavy, and
backed Kopp on almost every fight.
Yeah, we're doing decent. Betting for or against Kopp here.
Yeah, I'm very surprised we didn't talk about it as well with both of us on Kopp. I think he's a side. I don't know if he gets a TKO or not, but I'm going to pick him. Zhang Weili taking on Joanna Jędrzejczyk. It hurts my gut so bad to go against my girl, but my heart and my brain telling me Zhang Weili takes this one.
Yeah, I'm also on Zhang Weili. I'm going to let that line continue to go down, but I might end up putting 1 or 2 units on her. Yeah, I'll go with Weili there. Then in the co-main event, we have Shevchenko versus Taila Santos, and I'm pretty big on Shevchenko here. I do think that Santos is one of the more formidable opponents that she's faced recently, but at the same time, Shevchenko dusts everybody, so I do not think it's going to be any different.
So I was not taking shots on my girl Chukagian, Andrade, Lauren Murphy. I did not bet them for the upset, but I did put a little quarter unit on Santos because of her style and how strong she is in the clinch, in the grappling. But I think my pick will still be Shevchenko. Glover Teixeira, Jiri Prochazka in the main event. Man, both guys have finishing upside like no other. But give me the underdog champion to come through again, man. Give me Glover inside the distance.
Yeah, we're seeing it the same way, man. I would really like to see old man Glover win it, and then a quick turnaround for Magomed Ankalaev.
Yeah, catch that plus 1,000 ticket
exactly.
for us. That would be nice. That concludes all 12 fights. Hopefully these all stay together here. We're out in Singapore. Remember the road to the UFC on Thursday and Friday as well. We got some extra fights. I appreciate you guys tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
Peace.